I used to think I was just a small cog in a massive machine, until I discovered what they were doing behind closed doors. And when I opened my mouth, they tried to shut it, with money, with threats, with silence. But what they didn't know was that I'm not that easy to extinguish. My name is Madeline Shore, and at 35, I had finally made it to where I thought I wanted to be. The corner office on the 14th floor of Nimbus Vault's glass tower in Brixton Hill, Pennsylvania. Wasn't exactly a penthouse suite, but it had a window. After 12 years of fluorescent-lit cubicles, that window meant everything. I grew up in Kansas, where success meant a steady job at the grain elevator or the local bank. My parents never understood why I left for a state school, then kept going east, chasing something they couldn't name. But I knew. I wanted to matter. I wanted to be in rooms where decisions were made, not just executed. Nimbus Vault was everything I'd imagined corporate America to be: sleek, fast-moving, ruthless. We specialized in financial technology, the kind of algorithms that moved billions in microseconds. I'd started as a junior analyst, worked my way through project management, and had just been promoted to senior manager of strategic initiatives. It was a title that meant I was close enough to the C-suite to smell their cologne, but not quite close enough to join their golf games. The promotion came with proximity to Reed Mallory, VP of Strategy. Reed was the kind of man who wore his power like an expensive suit, perfectly tailored, impossibly smooth, and designed to make you feel underdressed. He had this way of entering a room that made everyone automatically check their posture. Harvard MBA, of course, son of a federal judge. The kind of pedigree that opened doors before he even knocked. "Welcome to the deep end, Shore," he'd said on my first day in the new role, his smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Hope you know how to swim." The thing about swimming in corporate waters is that no one tells you about the undertow. The first few weeks were a blur of 18-hour days, back-to-back meetings, and PowerPoints that seemed to reproduce overnight. I lived on coffee and ambition, checking my phone at red lights, answering emails at 2 a.m. The pressure was different up here. In middle management, you worried about deadlines and budgets. At this level, you worried about perception. Every word in every email could be dissected, every choice scrutinized. The men, and they were mostly men, watched each other like prize fighters, calculating weaknesses. I learned to navigate it the way women always do. Be competent but not threatening. Assertive but not aggressive. Friendly but not too friendly. It was exhausting, this constant calibration of my existence to fit into spaces designed for people who never had to think about fitting in. But I was good at my job. Really good. The Skyline Project, our flagship initiative to revolutionize international wire transfers, was my baby. I understood the technology, the regulations, the market need. For the first time in my career, I felt like I truly belonged in those glass-walled conference rooms. I should have known that feeling was dangerous. In places like Nimbus Vault, belonging was always conditional, always revocable. Especially for women like me, public school educated, no family connections, just talent and tenacity in a world that valued bloodlines over ability. Looking back, the signs were there from the beginning. The way conversations stopped when I entered the break room, the sidebar meetings that happened without me, the jokes about diversity hires that were meant to sound ironic but landed like punches. But I was too focused on proving myself to see what was really happening in those pristine offices. Too eager to finally have my seat at the table to notice the rot underneath its polished surface. It started with a number that didn't add up. Just one line item in a budget spreadsheet that made me pause during my third cup of coffee on a Tuesday night. $847,000 for specialized consulting services on the Skyline project. I knew every vendor, every contractor, every expense on that project. This one didn't exist in any of my files. I dug deeper. The payment went to Meridian Solutions, LLC, a company I'd never heard of. Their website was a single page of stock photos and corporate buzzwords. No client list, no case studies, no real address beyond a P.O. box in Delaware. The next morning, I found 3 more payments, different amounts, different companies, Apex Advisors, Sterling Strategies, Pinnacle Partners. all equally ghostly, all approved by Reed Mallory's digital signature. Together, they totaled over $3.2 million. I sat at my desk, staring at the screen, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. There had to be an explanation. Maybe a classified security component I wasn't cleared for. Maybe specialized regulatory compliance I didn't know about. Hey, Brad. I caught our finance director at the coffee machine. Quick question about some Skyline vendors. Which ones? His smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Meridian Solutions? They've been billing us for... Oh, those are Reed's special projects. Very hush-hush. Innovation stuff. He stirred his coffee with unusual focus. You know how he is about his strategic initiatives. I did know. Reed ran his division like a private fiefdom. But this was my project. These expenses were hitting my budget. That afternoon, I knocked on Reed's door. He was on a call, feet up on his desk, laughing at something. He waved me in without looking up. Listen, Jim, I gotta run. Shore's here. He hung up and swiveled to face me, that practiced smile sliding into place. Madeline, what can I do for you? I was reviewing the Skyline budget and noticed some consulting expenses. Ah. He leaned back, fingers steepled. You've been thorough. Good quality in a manager. Sometimes not so good for one's career longevity. The words hung in the air between us. I kept my expression neutral, a skill I'd perfected over the years. I just want to ensure proper documentation for the audit trail, I said carefully. Of course you do. He studied me like I was a chess piece he was considering moving. Tell you what, why don't you take a few days off? You've been burning pretty hot lately. Looking a little... stressed? I'm fine. Are you? His concern was so perfectly calibrated it almost sounded genuine. Because I've noticed you've been asking a lot of questions, poking around in areas that, frankly, aren't your concern. That kind of behavior can be interpreted as, well, paranoid, unstable, even... My mouth went dry. Reed, I'm just doing my job. Your job is to execute the Skyline project, not to play detective. He stood, moving to open his door for me. Take the long weekend, clear your head. Come back refreshed and focused on what matters. It wasn't a suggestion. I walked back to my office on unsteady legs. Through the glass walls, I could see my colleagues bent over their desks, none of them looking up. In the elevator reflection, I looked exactly like what Reed had said, stressed, maybe even paranoid. But I wasn't wrong. Those companies were shells. That money was going somewhere it shouldn't. And Reed Mallory had just threatened me with all the subtlety of a silk glove over an iron fist. That night, I started making copies of everything. Screenshots, downloads, email forwards to my personal account. If they thought I'd just forget what I'd seen, they'd picked the wrong woman. The truth has a way of leaving traces, even in places designed to hide it. And I was very good at following trails. I didn't take the long weekend. I showed up Monday morning to find my keycard wouldn't open the executive floor. The security guard, Marcus, who'd greeted me by name for years, looked at his screen with studied confusion. Says here you've been reassigned to operations support, Ms. Shore, 10th floor. Operations support, a glorified data entry pool. I maintained my composure through the elevator ride down, even as my hands shook. The 10th floor smelled like old carpet and broken dreams. My new desk was a cubicle in the middle of a fluorescent wasteland, facing a wall. Welcome to the island of misfit toys, said the woman in the next cube. Her name was Janet, and her eyes held the dulled shine of someone who'd given up fighting years ago. What did you do? Ask too many questions? I tried accessing the Skyline project files. Access denied. My email folders had been sanitized. Anything related to the project mysteriously vanished. Even my calendar had been wiped clean of strategy meetings. Over the next 2 weeks, I became invisible. Emails went unanswered. My reports disappeared into digital black holes. When I passed former colleagues in the hall, they developed sudden fascinations with their phones. Sarah, who'd been my lunch companion for 3 years, actually turned and walked the other way when she saw me coming. The whispers started small, huddles that dispersed when I approached, conversations that shifted to weather when I entered the break room. Then I overheard it directly. Two junior analysts by the printer, not realizing I was in the supply closet. Yeah, Reed said she completely lost it, started seeing conspiracies everywhere, accused him of embezzlement or something crazy. Mental health issues are serious. My cousin had a breakdown at work once. Same thing, paranoia, thinking everyone was out to get her. Reed's being super supportive, though. He's trying to keep HR from just firing her outright. Says she was a good employee before. You know. I stood frozen among the boxes of paper. Understanding flooding through me. This wasn't just a demotion, it was a systematic dismantling of my credibility. Reed was crafting a narrative where I was the problem, not the missing millions. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced my apartment, laptop open, going through the files I'd saved. The shell companies, the signatures, the money flowing out like water through a broken dam. But who would believe me now? The unstable woman who'd been demoted for erratic behavior? Then I found it. Buried in my personal email from 2 months ago, a forward I'd sent myself of the meeting recording from a Skyline project review. I'd forgotten about it, just routine documentation. But at the 47-minute mark, there was Reed's voice, clear as day. The beauty of the subsidiary structure is the flexibility it provides. Meridian, Apex, the others. There are safety valves. If anyone starts sniffing around, we just show them the innovation budget. Nobody questions innovation spending, it's Silicon Valley's magic word. And then, quieter, to someone off camera. Make sure Shore doesn't have access to the full financial dashboard. She's smart, but she's not one of us. Keep her focused on the technical side. My hands trembled as I saved multiple copies to different drives. This was it, proof that the shell companies were intentional, that my exclusion was deliberate. But it was also proof that I was now a threat that needed handling. The next morning, I submitted a routine IT ticket for software access. Within an hour, Dennis from HR was at my cubicle. Madeline, we need to discuss your recent behavior. There have been concerns about your stability. Multiple colleagues have reported you seem distressed, making accusations, exhibiting signs of paranoia. Dennis, we care about your well-being. The company has excellent mental health resources. I think it would be best if you took some medical leave. Voluntary, of course, but highly recommended. I looked at his face, professionally concerned, and saw the trap closing. Take the leave and be labeled mentally unfit. Refuse and be fired for insubordination. I need to think about it, I managed. Of course. Take the day. But Madeline? He leaned closer. Sometimes the healthiest thing is knowing when to step back. After he left, I sat in my sad cubicle, surrounded by the wreckage of my career, and made a decision. If they wanted to play with documentation and evidence, they'd chosen the wrong opponent. I started documenting everything, every conversation, every slight, every locked door. And I kept digging into those shell companies, following the money like breadcrumbs through a dark forest. They thought they'd silenced me. They had no idea how loud I was about to become. The envelope was tucked under my windshield wiper like a parking ticket, plain white, no markings. Inside, a single sheet of paper with 5 words. Stop digging or lose everything. My hands didn't shake anymore. 3 weeks of corporate psychological warfare had cured me of that. I photographed the note, the envelope, my car, the empty parking garage at 9 p.m. on a Thursday. Evidence, always evidence. The calls started that weekend. My phone would ring at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., no caller ID. When I answered, just breathing. Sometimes a whisper. You should have taken the leave. I stopped sleeping in my bedroom, moving to the couch where I could see both the door and windows. Paranoid? Maybe. But paranoia and prudence look identical when you're actually being hunted. Monday morning, there was a man in a gray sedan outside my apartment building. He didn't look at me, but when I left for work, He left too. When I stopped for coffee, he parked across the street. By lunch, I documented 3 different cars that seemed to appear wherever I went. "You look tired," my boyfriend Daniel said over dinner that night. We'd been together 2 years, talked about marriage. Now he pushed his pasta around his plate, avoiding my eyes. "I haven't been sleeping well." "Maybe because you're obsessing over this work thing?" His voice had an edge I'd never heard before. "Madeline, you need to let it go. You're seeing conspiracies everywhere, cars following you, anonymous threats. Do you hear yourself? I have photos of random cars, of a note that could be from anyone." He slammed his fork down. "My sister called me, said she saw you at the library printing hundreds of pages of documents. The librarian thought you were having some kind of episode." I stared at him. "You've been checking up on me?" "I'm worried about you. We all are. Your mom called." "You talked to my mother?" "She's concerned. Everyone's concerned. Maybe Reed was right. Maybe you do need help." The words hit like ice water. "Reed? When did you talk to Reed?" Daniel's face went pale. He reached out, said he was worried about you, wanted to make sure you had support." I stood up slowly, my napkin falling to the floor. "Get out! Madeline! Get out!" After he left, I deadbolted the door and sat in the dark, understanding the full scope of what they'd done. They'd poisoned every relationship I had, my colleagues, my boyfriend, probably my family. Classic isolation tactics. Make the target question their own reality. Make everyone else question it too. But they'd made one mistake. They'd pushed too hard, too fast. The Daniel I knew would never have contacted my mother without talking to me first, would never have accepted a call from my boss. The manipulation was so obvious once I saw it. That's when I knew I needed professional help, just not the kind they wanted me to get. Teresa Quinn's office was in a converted brownstone in the old part of town. No corporate glass and steel, just solid brick and a brass nameplate. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with the kind of eyes that had seen corporate monsters and lived to tell about it. "Nimbus Vault," she said, after I'd laid out everything. The documents, the recordings, the harassment. "I've been waiting for someone from there to walk through my door. You know them?" "I know their type, and I know Reed Mallory. Not personally, but professionally. You're not the first woman he's tried to bury." She pulled out a legal pad. "But you might be the first with this much documentation. You've been smart." "I've been terrified." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Now, let's talk about what happens next. They've already tried to discredit you. The next step will be termination on mental health grounds. After that," she met my eyes. "These people play rough. You need to decide right now if you're ready for war." I thought about the envelope on my car, the calls in the night, Daniel's face when he said Reed's name, my career in ashes, my reputation in ruins. "I'm ready." "Then we file with the SEC tomorrow. Whistleblower complaint, securities fraud, the whole package. Once it's filed, you have federal protection. They touch you after that. It's obstruction of justice." "What about the threats?" "Document everything, get security cameras, vary your routine." "And Madeline?" She leaned forward. "Stop trying to do this alone. That's what they're counting on." That night, I installed new locks, security cameras, and motion sensors. I might have been paranoid, but I was going to be paranoid with evidence. They wanted me to disappear quietly into the night, broken and silenced. They were about to learn that some women don't break. We shatter, then reform into something harder. The SEC filing went live at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. By 9:15, my desk phone was ringing. Dennis from HR, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Madeline, we need you in conference room A immediately." I took my time walking there, savoring my last moments as an employee of Nimbus Vault. The executive floor had miraculously reopened to my keycard. Funny how federal whistleblower protection could cure security glitches. The room was full. Reed, of course, flanked by legal counsel. The chief human resources officer. Two people I didn't recognize who screamed internal investigation. They all looked at me like I was a bomb that had just walked in. Ms. Sure, the lead lawyer began. We understand you filed certain allegations with federal authorities. Allegations? I sat down, pulled out my phone, and placed it on the table. I prefer to call them documented facts. This conversation is being recorded. By the way, whistleblower protection includes protection against retaliation. Reed's face went from red to purple. You ungrateful. Reed. The lawyer's hand on his arm was a leash. Ms. Sure. We're prepared to offer you a separation package, generous severance, full benefits extension, strong references. All we ask is that you clarify certain misunderstandings with the SEC. I almost laughed. Misunderstandings like the $3.2 million in fraudulent payments to shell companies. Those were legitimate innovation expenditures. Really? Then you won't mind when the SEC subpoenas Meridian Solutions tax records. Oh wait, they don't have any. Because they don't exist. The second unknown suit leaned forward. Ms. Sure. You're making serious accusations against a respected executive. The damage to Mr. Mallory's reputation is self-inflicted. I pulled out a printed email. Would you like me to read the part where he discusses using innovation budgets as safety valves? Or should I skip to where he calls me not one of us and orders my exclusion from financial data? Silence. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause. You're fired, Reed said quietly. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Perfect. I stood, gathered my things. My lawyer will be thrilled. Terminating a federal whistleblower the day of filing, that's a class action gift wrapped in a bow. The CHO finally spoke. What do you want, Madeline? I wanted to do my job. You made that impossible. Now? I want the truth to come out. Every dirty dollar, every fake company, every person who knew and said nothing. I looked directly at Reed. I want you to learn that some people can't be bought, threatened, or silenced. Security was waiting outside. Two guards I'd never seen before. Their faces professionally blank. The walk to my cubicle was a parade of stares. Word had already spread. Some colleagues looked shocked, others wouldn't meet my eyes. Sarah actually mouthed, "I'm sorry," from her desk. I had 15 minutes to pack, 10 years reduced to a cardboard box. As I collected my things, I heard Reed's voice echoing from the executive floor. An all-hands meeting was being called damage control. By the time I reached the lobby, my phone was exploding. Teresa, warning me that Nimbus had already issued a statement about addressing accounting irregularities discovered by their robust internal controls. They were trying to get ahead of the story, paint themselves as the heroes who'd caught their own fraud. But I had one more card to play. Jessica Chen from the Financial Times had been waiting for my call. Within an hour, she had the documents, the emails, the recordings. Everything Nimbus Vault didn't want public. This is huge, she said. But Madeline, once this goes live, they'll come at you with everything. Character assassination, legal intimidation. Are you prepared? I thought about the last month. The isolation, the gaslighting, the fear. What else could they take that they hadn't already tried to destroy? Run it. The article posted at 3 p.m. Nimbus Vault Insider exposes million-dollar shadow payments. My name, my photo, my story. No hiding behind anonymous sources. If I was going to burn bridges, I'd stand in the light of the flames. By evening, 3 more reporters had called, 2 congressional staffers, and 5 former Nimbus employees who'd been too scared to speak up before. You have no idea what you've started, one woman told me. Reed did the same thing to me 5 years ago. But I didn't have proof. I didn't have courage. Thank you. That night, alone in my apartment with my security cameras and my cardboard box of possessions, I finally let myself cry. Not from sadness or fear, but from relief. The secret was out. The silence was broken. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and depositions and a fight that might last years. But tonight, for the first time in months, I could breathe. They'd tried to erase me. Instead, I'd written myself into their worst nightmare, a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The federal building's conference room smelled like old coffee and justice deferred. I sat across from 3 SEC investigators, my hands steady as I walked them through 18 months of financial records. Every shell company, every inflated invoice, every email where Reed discussed creative accounting. Ms. Shore, the lead investigator said, are you willing to testify to this under oath? I've been waiting to. The preliminary hearing was set for 6 weeks out. Reed would face me in a room where money couldn't buy silence and connections couldn't erase evidence. But first came the discovery phase, and that's when the real war began. Nimbus Vault's legal team descended like locusts. 12 lawyers from 3 firms, all aimed at discrediting one woman with a cardboard box of truth. They subpoenaed my medical records, looking for any history of mental illness. They deposed my ex-boyfriends, hunting for character flaws. They even contacted my college professors, searching for signs of instability. But Teresa had prepared me for this. They'll try to drown you in paper and shame. Don't let them. What Nimbus didn't expect was the flood of support that followed. My inbox filled with messages from women across the industry. Former employees came forward with their own stories. Sarah, who'd avoided me in the halls, showed up at my apartment with a USB drive. I kept copies too, she said. Of everything. I was too scared to use them. But you're not. The documents she'd saved revealed the scope. Reed's shadow network extended far beyond Skyline. Almost $12 million siphoned over 3 years through various projects. And at the bottom of one email chain, CC'd almost accidentally, was the CEO himself. They all knew, I told the SEC team at our next meeting. This wasn't one rogue executive. It was a system. The hearing room was smaller than I'd imagined. No dramatic courtroom, just a conference table and a court reporter. Reed entered with his phalanx of lawyers, his confident stride slightly less certain. He looked older, grayer. Good. State your name for the record. Madeline Shore. For 6 hours, I testified. Every detail, every document, every moment of realization. Reed's lawyers tried to paint me as a disgruntled employee, a woman scorned by lack of promotion, a fantasist who misunderstood legitimate business practices. Ms. Shore, isn't it true you were demoted for performance issues? I was demoted the day after questioning fraudulent payments. You mean alleged fraudulent payments? No, I mean fraudulent. As proven by the fact that these companies don't exist beyond paper. Objection to the characterization. This isn't a criminal trial. The arbitrator interrupted. Ms. Shore, continue. When Reed took the stand, his story crumbled like wet cardboard. He couldn't explain why innovation consultants had no employees, why cutting-edge strategic advisors operated from empty offices, why millions in payments had no deliverables. I relied on my team's recommendations, he repeated. I signed what was put in front of me. But then Teresa played the recording, Reed's voice, clear and casual, explaining the safety valve system. The room went silent except for the court reporter's keys. The news broke that evening. SEC expands Nimbus Vault investigation to senior leadership. By morning, 2 more executives had been suspended. The stock price plummeted 15%. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. You destroyed everything. Reed's voice, raw with rage. My career. My reputation. For what? Because you couldn't play the game? No. Reed. Because you forgot that some people play by the rules. And when you break them, eventually someone says enough. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Check your email. 3 hours earlier, Jessica Chen had published her follow-up. 3 former employees, all women, had come forward with their own experiences of Reed's retaliation. The pattern was clear. Question Reed, face destruction, until now. The class action suit was filed within a week. 17 plaintiffs, seeking $6.3 million. in damages for wrongful termination, defamation, and emotional distress. I wasn't even the lead plaintiff anymore. I was just the woman who'd opened the door. Reed was terminated for cause 2 weeks later. No golden parachute, no soft landing, just a perp walk past the same employees he'd terrorized. His cardboard box held like a shield. But the victory felt hollow. I'd won. But at what cost? My career at Nimbus was over. My reputation in the industry was either whistleblower hero or troublemaker, depending on who you asked. The money from the eventual settlement would help, but it couldn't buy back the months of fear, the lost relationships, the nights I'd spent wondering if I was actually going crazy. "You did the right thing," Teresa told me after the final depositions. "That has to count for something." It did. Every email from a woman who'd found courage in my story. Every news article about increased SEC oversight. Every company quietly reviewing their books, suddenly afraid of their own Madeline Shores. The war was over, but the rebuilding had just begun. The settlement came through on a gray Thursday morning. $1.7 million for me. $4.6 million distributed among the other plaintiffs. Not enough to retire on, but enough to breathe. Reed Mallory faced criminal charges for embezzlement and wire fraud. The trial would take years, but his mugshot had already done the work. The golden boy of corporate strategy reduced to a case number. I didn't go back to corporate finance. How could I? The glass towers looked different now. Less like monuments to success and more like carefully constructed facades. Instead, I took a position with the Corporate Accountability Institute, a nonprofit that helps whistleblowers navigate the maze of federal protection and legal action. My office is smaller now. No corner view, no executive floor, just a desk, a computer, and a phone that rings with voices I recognize, women and men who've seen something wrong and don't know what to do about it. "They're threatening to fire me," one caller says, her voice shaking. "They say I'm being paranoid." "You're not paranoid if they're actually after you," I tell her. "Let's talk about documentation." I teach them what I learned the hard way. Save everything. Trust carefully. Know that doing the right thing might cost you everything except your integrity. And sometimes, that has to be enough. The Industry Week article called me the woman who brought down Reed Mallory. But that's not accurate. I'm the woman who refused to look away. The system brought him down, the same system he'd thought he'd mastered. Sarah and I have coffee sometimes. She's still at Nimbus, promoted to my old position. The company implemented new financial controls, mandatory ethics training, anonymous reporting systems. "It's different now," she says. "Not perfect, but different." Daniel tried to reconcile 6 months after everything ended. He showed up with flowers and apologies, saying he understood now. That Reed had manipulated him too. I let him talk, then closed the door. Some bridges, once burned, light the way forward. My mother still doesn't fully understand what happened. "Couldn't you have just kept quiet and kept your job?" she asked during our weekly calls. I don't blame her. She comes from a generation where security meant more than truth. But security built on lies isn't security at all. It's just delayed disaster. The young women who call me now, they understand. They've seen enough corporate scandals to know that silence is complicity. They've watched enough their Me Too moments to understand that power protects itself until someone says no more. Not every story ends with victory. Some whistleblowers lose everything and gain nothing but the knowledge they spoke up. Some face retaliation that makes my experience look gentle, but every voice adds to the chorus that says corruption isn't inevitable, that power isn't absolute, that one person can matter. Reed Mallory thought he was untouchable. He had the connections, the credentials, the carefully crafted reputation. What he didn't have was the understanding that some things matter more than climbing ladders built on other people's backs. I keep a photo on my desk now, not of my family or friends, but of the Nimbus Vault building. A reminder of where I've been and why I left. Sometimes young consultants recognize it when they come for advice. "Is it true?" they ask. "Did you really take down a VP?" "No," I tell them. "I told the truth. The truth took down a VP. The difference matters. I'm not a hero. I'm just a woman who found something wrong and refused to pretend otherwise. In a world that rewards looking away, sometimes that's revolutionary enough. My story isn't unique anymore. Every month brings new headlines, new scandals, new voices refusing to be silenced. The old boys network is learning that their closed doors have windows. Their private conversations have recordings. Their hidden millions leave paper trails. And somewhere in a federal prison, Reed Mallory is learning that power is only as strong as the silence it can buy. When that silence breaks, even the mightiest fall. I'm Madeline Shore. I was employee number 10847 at Nimbus Vault. I'm the woman who wouldn't shut up, and I'm not alone anymore. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below, and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Your own experiences and perspectives make these conversations richer for everyone.